Dinner had always been a symbol of connection for me, a time when families gathered to share a meal and enjoy each other's company. It was a simple tradition that, for years, I had cherished. But on one particular evening, dinner turned into something far more sinister. It became the stage of betrayal, for a shocking revelation that would tear apart everything I believed about my marriage. In the beginning, things were good. My wife and I shared countless intimate moments, laughing together, talking about everything and nothing, and making plans for the future. It was the kind of connection I thought was unbreakable. I was certain that our relationship was solid, built on mutual respect and understanding. It wasn't perfect, of course, but what marriage is, I never once doubted that we were a team united through thick and thin. But over time, things began to change. The once seamless conversation started to feel forced, as if we were both going through the motions. There was a noticeable shift in her behavior. Emotional distance started to creep in. What had once been affectionate gestures became increasingly rare, and intimacy was replaced with excuses. At first, I thought it was just stress from work, or perhaps a phase. But as the months passed, I couldn't shake the feeling that something deeper was wrong. I started to notice small things. The way she would look at her phone for longer periods of time, how she seemed distracted when we were together, and the constant late nights she started to have. I brushed off some of it, telling myself that I was overthinking, but deep down, a seed of doubt was planted, and with doubt came suspicion. My mind started to race, wondering if I was the only one who still cared, wondering if she had started to drift away from me. I couldn't ignore the feeling any longer, so I began to quietly investigate. I didn't want to believe it, but the thought of betrayal gnawed at me, and I couldn't shake it. One evening, I found myself staring at her phone while she was in the other room. It was unlocked. That small, seemingly insignificant detail gave me the opening I needed. It felt like crossing a line, but I had to know the truth. I synced our locations on our phones, and what I saw confirmed my worst fears. She had been meeting someone. The realization hit me like a punch to the stomach. I didn't have proof of everything yet, but I couldn't ignore the evidence. I scrolled through her text messages, my heart pounding in my chest. What I found stopped me in my tracks. There were messages, secret, flirtatious messages, between her and another man. The texts were casual, but beneath the surface, they were charged with something far more intimate. I could feel my world unraveling with every word I read. This was no longer just a suspicion. It was the truth staring me in the face. I couldn't let it go. I had to know more. I traced the man's identity and learned that he, too, had a family. This was bigger than just my wife's infidelity. It was a web of deceit that stretched beyond our home. The feeling of betrayal intensified as I realized how deep the lie ran. The man wasn't just some random person. He had his own life, his own family, and yet he had been entangled with my wife in secret. I felt sick. My trust, my love, everything I believed in had been shattered. But I wasn't going to confront her in the heat of the moment. I needed to be strategic. I didn't want her to be able to manipulate the situation, to lie her way out of it, or to turn the tables on me. So I devised a plan. I would wait until she had prepared dinner, and then I would have the other man, Michael, show up at our door. I would catch her off guard. She wouldn't be able to hide behind excuses anymore. The night of the dinner arrived. My wife was busy preparing the meal, unaware of what was about to unfold. I knew Michael was coming. The plan was simple. When he arrived, I would confront both of them. I had to be calm, calculated, and in control. This wasn't just about exposing her lies. It was about reclaiming my dignity. I wasn't going to let her or him get away with it. The moment Michael knocked on the door, everything changed. My wife froze, her face paling as she realized what was happening. I stood there, watching her, my heart pounding. I revealed that I knew about the affair, about the lies she had been telling me for months. Her reaction was immediate, shock, guilt, and then anger. But it was too late for her to deny it. The truth was out in the open, raw and undeniable. In that moment, everything I thought I knew about my marriage crumbled. The trust, the love, the future we had talked about. It was all a lie. I felt nothing but betrayal. There was no going back from this. The decision was clear. I would pursue a divorce. I couldn't stay in a marriage built on lies and deceit. Trust, once broken, could never be repaired. As I made the decision to move forward with a divorce, I felt a sense of relief. It wasn't an easy choice, but it was the right one. I had lost more than just a wife that night. I had lost the future I had imagined. But I also realized that staying in a relationship like this would have only destroyed me further. I had to walk away. I had to regain my self-respect. I learned a hard lesson that night. Trust is a foundation of any relationship. Without it, there is nothing. And once that trust is broken, there's no repairing it, no matter how much you want to hold on. Sometimes letting go is the only way to move forward. The betrayal cut deep, but it also showed me that I had the strength to rebuild, and that was something I could never lose sight of. As the days passed after the confrontation, the weight of what had happened settled in deeper. The house that had once felt like a home now felt cold and empty, a stark reminder of everything that had been lost. I kept replaying that dinner in my mind, the look on her face, the shock in her eyes, the quiet, almost hollow way she had tried to justify her actions. But there was no justification. There was nothing she could say to undo the hurt, to rebuild the trust that had been shattered beyond repair. I spent the following weeks in a fog of disbelief. A sense of numbness surrounded me like a protective shield. I didn't know how to move forward, but I knew I couldn't stay stuck. The divorce proceedings began, and with each passing day, I felt a mix of relief and sorrow. I had once believed in us, in our future, in the dreams we shared. But now, those dreams seemed distant, a mirage that had vanished as quickly as it had appeared. My wife tried to apologize, tried to explain her actions, but I couldn't bring myself to listen. The trust was gone, and with it, any hope for reconciliation. She was a stranger to me now, not the woman I had married, not the person I had once confided in. It was heartbreaking to realize that the person I thought I knew, the person I had shared my life with, had been living a lie. I couldn't help but feel anger at her for betraying me, for destroying everything we had built. But there was also anger at myself for not seeing the signs sooner, for ignoring the small cracks in our relationship that eventually turned into a chasm. I wondered if I had missed something, anything that might have prevented this. But I had to remind myself that this wasn't my fault. She had made a choice, and I was left to deal with the consequences of it. During the process of the divorce, I found myself focusing on what was important, my own healing. I spent time with family and friends, leaning on them for support, trying to find my footing again. Slowly, I began to rebuild my life, piece by piece. The pain didn't disappear overnight, but I started to realize that I was stronger than I had given myself credit for. I wasn't defined by the betrayal. I was defined by how I chose to move forward from it. The divorce was finalized after months of legal battles and emotional turmoil. It was final, the end of an era, and as the papers were signed, I felt a strange sense of closure. There would be no more lying, no more pretending that things could ever go back to the way they were. I was free in more ways than one. The life I had once envisioned for myself had been shattered, but it was also a chance to rebuild something new. I didn't know what that new life would look like yet, but I knew I had to find it for myself. In the month that followed, I took time for self-reflection. I understood that the pain of betrayal wasn't something that would disappear instantly, but I began to understand that it was a part of my journey, a painful, necessary part. It taught me the importance of self-respect, the value of trusting myself, and the need to prioritize my own well-being above all else. It wasn't easy, and there were days when the ache in my chest felt unbearable, but I learned to be kind to myself, to forgive myself for the things I couldn't control. I also realized that I didn't need another person to define my worth. I didn't need a relationship to feel whole. It was hard to embrace that at first, but slowly, I began to feel more comfortable in my own skin. I was learning to be content with who I was, and that was the first step toward true healing. As time went on, I became more and more convinced that trust was the cornerstone of any meaningful relationship. Without it, everything else fell apart. I didn't want to carry the weight of betrayal into any future relationships. I wasn't ready to open myself up to someone else just yet. Instead, I focused on becoming the best version of myself, stronger, more resilient, and, above all, more aware of what I truly needed in a relationship. The experience had changed me in ways I couldn't yet fully comprehend. But I knew one thing for sure. I was no longer the person who had been betrayed. I was someone who had learned the value of self-worth, of standing up for myself, of walking away when I had to. And while the scars of betrayal would never fully fade, I had learned to carry them with grace. They no longer defined me. Instead, they reminded me of my strength, of my ability to overcome, and my commitment to never settle for anything less than the love and respect I deserved. One day, I would be ready to love again, but only when I had truly healed, when I could trust myself and the person I was with. Until then, I would continue to focus on building the life I had lost and finding peace within myself. Because I had learned that in the end, the most important relationship I had was the one with myself. And that was a relationship worth nurturing.